Thank you for listening to Remake Rewind, the podcast for decided remakes or reboots should have happened. I'm Mike, as always. With me, I've got my two co-hosts. Who are you guys?
I'm David.
I'm
I was
Alex.
the host last week because you just lied to all our listeners, Mike. You said, as always, you're here as the host.
I've missed
That's
one
a lie.
episode in almost 3 years.
It was a hyperbole and a lie.
Both of you fools took off like 2 months straight last year, so don't give me that nonsense.
It's almost that holiday time.
Yeah, you bitches. You damn dirty bitches.
Dirty, rotten scoundrels, one might
Oh, I
say.
mean, that's what I
Dirty,
meant. You
rotten.
dirty, rotten scoundrels. So, yeah, that's what we're covering. Dirty, Rotten Scoundrels from 1988, the year of my birth. And the remake from this year, which was the female-driven remake called The Hustle, starring Anne Hathaway and Rebel Wilson. The original one had a... Well, I guess it's not the original one. So, technically, we're covering two remakes. The original movie was called The Bedtime Story, and it starred Marlon Brando, but it wasn't really a comedy per se. And we decided to cover the two more recent ones because Dirty Rotten Scoundrels considered a classic. It's on a lot of people's top 100 greatest comedies of all time. And Steve Martin and Michael Caine kind of in their heyday, and so we figured we'd watch it. And
Yep.
yeah,
We did.
Oh, yeah.
we did watch it.
I'd
Do you
watch
guys
those
think
movies.
this belongs in the top 100 greatest films of all time?
Nope.
Greatest
No.
films? No.
No, or greatest comedies?
I mean, maybe comedies, not films. It was
okay.
a good movie. I don't know that I could.
Have
name
you guys
100 comedies.
seen it before?
No, this
No.
is the first.
Oh, yeah. I haven't seen it, and I haven't seen the new one either until recently. The original one, it's going to be hard not to say the original one. The 1988 Dirty Rotten Scoundrels is like a Broadway musical now and very successful, and it's considered a classic. I'm just going to say I didn't really enjoy either of these movies right off the bat.
Yeah, I would say that's a fair assessment. So I watched the new one first, and then the old one, Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, second, because I had more time after.
Okay.
But I enjoyed the original movie better.
Oh, yeah, me too.
Oh, definitely.
So who's going to summarize the original one, and then we'll just get into talking about it.
All right. I got this one. This is from Rob. Lawrence and Freddie are con men, big time and small time, respectively. They unsuccessfully attempt to work together, only to find that this town on the French Riviera ain't big enough for the two of them. They agree to a loser-leaves bet. The bet brings out the best and worst in the two. And this is from Rob.
Thanks, Rob.
Thanks, Rob. So, I don't know how I feel about this movie because I like both of the leads so much.
Yeah.
Like,
Michael
I
Caine
love
and
Michael
Steve
Caine.
Martin.
I didn't know
And
who
I
to
love
root
Steve
for.
Martin. Steve Martin has one of my favorite jokes of all time.
What's that?
Ever.
What was that joke?
So, it's from the Academy Awards when he hosted, one of the many times he hosted. It was the year that Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon came out. And he has this joke. It's a stupid joke, but I think it's hilarious. And I still laugh when I hear it or when I think about it. But he says, I saw Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, and I didn't see any tigers or dragons. And I realized why. Because they were all crouching and hidden. And I love that joke. I love it.
All
I
right.
love Steve Martin.
Okay, then.
But and I just recently rewatched The Jerk for the first time in several years. Liked that movie, and I like him in a bunch of movies. And this is one of his most famous roles, so I was really expecting this to be good. Maybe I went into this movie with too high of expectations. But I was kind of
I watched The Hustle
bored.
first, so I didn't have a lot of expectations for this movie.
Well, the thing, and we'll get into it, the two movies are very similar,
Yeah.
but one is drastically worse.
Drastically.
So this movie starts with, oh, I've got my notes for the wrong one first. That was stupid. It just starts with like this woman wanting to give Michael Caine her pearls for his like freedom fighters, and he's like, no, the men would never take it. They're too proud. Well, then for the women fight along the men. Okay, for the children. He's like, okay, for the children. And he has this whole like bit where he's pretending to be a prince of some foreign country, and he's trying to gamble to raise money for his troops. And that's kind of like how the movie starts. And it's a full like 9 minutes before Steve Martin shows up when they're on a train. and he just like cons his way into like a free meal, giving this like story about his grandmother who's, you know, sick and dying, and he just can't spend any money. And then he does this little bit where like they ask him what he wants to eat, and then he orders like the entire menu. And he's super charming. I'm like, okay, I think I'm gonna like this. And he has this whole like spiel about why he's a con man to Michael Caine before he realizes Michael Caine's a con man. I thought there was some pretty funny jokes in there where he's like, you know, men are the weaker sex. We have more the weaker sex. We have more heart attacks. We die earlier. More prostate problems. So the movie started out really funny, and I was just expecting like that quick Steve Martin wit the whole movie, and I don't think we really got it.
No.
But what were some highlights for you guys?
I actually, some of the scenes in the beginning were pretty funny. I love that because like they kept shoving her into bushes while they're trying to tell her a secret.
Yeah, that was great. I was dying.
I was like,
yeah,
it's like a Naked Gun kind of skit going on here.
The movie was really funny at the beginning, like, and this I feel like they did their best moves against each other at the beginning, like Michael Caine being a con man and not. He hasn't presented himself as a con man yet. He hires this beautiful woman to get on the train and try to distract Steve Martin so Steve Martin doesn't go to his town and like attract, you know, basically get people worried about con men. And, you know, this guy ends up just coming back, and he has this thing where when he's like talking to Michael Caine and he's telling him he's a con man, he's like saying like, women want this. I'm teaching how to manipulate women. Like Steve Martin's an asshole in this movie.
Yeah, that's
pretty much.
Yeah. I agree. Like, I feel like the setup was kind of good though. Like, I wanted more like spy versus spy kind of thing. Like,
yeah. And what I thought this movie was going to initially be, and when it set up, and I watched the trailer for it, and the trailer has this thing like where they're walking down the boardwalk, being really nice gentlemen and everything. Like, I thought this was going to be they team up for this like super elaborate con, and it's almost like the Odd Couple. I didn't realize it was going to be a bet, and they were working against each other. So I went into this movie with a bunch of preconceived notes. Excuse me, I'm coming down with a cold, so I'm going to try to get through this episode. You know, I thought it was good, like Alex said, a spy versus spy kind of thing, but that's what it ended up being, kind of.
Yeah, kind of.
Like a slapstick spy.
I think
spy.
this parts when they were together worked the best. Like, I loved the whole, basically in a nutshell, the synopsis was pretty good, but they end up working together. Steve Martin figures out that Michael Caine is a con man, but a much better con man than him because he's a millionaire. And he says, teach me. We can work together, and, you know, two of us together will be insane. Like, we should do it. And so Michael Caine purposely wastes his time, teaches him how to be kind of like a gentleman, and then uses him in the complete opposite way. He has Steve Martin play like this buffoon who appears to be like autistic or something to scare off these women that he's going to pretend to marry. And he ends up not paying him for any of the jobs that they pull over the summer.
Yeah.
So Steve Martin goes off on his own, and then they kind of work against each other. But like some of those scenes, like the stuff that he does as the brother, I thought was some of the best stuff in the movie.
I really like the trident.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like the fork and it had the cork in it, and he like stabs himself in the eye patch.
He just puts himself in the eye patch. Yeah, I thought that was
the
really
eye
funny.
patch up.
And the way
His eye
he
is
holds
fun.
it, and he plays. Steve Martin plays a really great buffoon.
Yeah, he does.
But yeah, he does that, and this whole like the way he hugs the women, and he's just basically a monster. And Michael Caine's still pretending to be a prince, and he's getting married to these rich women, and then they call off the wedding because they don't want to deal with the Steve Martin brother character. And I thought that stuff was really funny. Like you said, the eye patch I think was a really nice touch. This whole like him screaming and breaking things, and it was stupid and elaborate, but he had these great. Steve Martin is a very good at physical humor as well as like having that quick wit. And most of this movie was ad-libbed. You know what? I think I'm just going to have you guys record it. I don't think I can get through the episode. Jesus Christ. Give me 1 second. I'm just going to go get a glass of water. I'll be right back.
Do it.
All right, now that he's gone, it's gonna be just like last week. All right, let's go, David.
Yeah, so Steve Martin is great not only at the quick wit and whatnot, but he's also very good at the physical humor. And that comes through a little bit more. I definitely think Steve Martin was the better character for the movie. He's definitely a worse person.
I just think he was a more elaborate character. He had a lot more facets in the movie, whereas Michael Caine was all the same straight man the whole time. Yeah,
but it felt hard for me to like. At some point in the movie, I was like, "Am I supposed to be rooting for Steve Martin? Because like he's doing some like fucked up shit right now."
And yeah, and I'm torn with that because like the movie presents it like Steve Martin was the first person to be wronged between the pair with each other. But Steve Martin is an asshole at the very beginning. Like he talks about, he's very misogynistic. He's bragging about being a con man, and he's not a good dude. And Michael Caine has this sense of honor and this code of ethics that he has. Like he will not steal from people who can't afford it. And Steve Martin doesn't have that, but I think it's just because he's a more charismatic person and he's wronged first. We're supposed to root for him because he's also like the outcast and he's kind of the underdog. But
it's weird because like he's like the underdog, and Michael Caine, how it's positioned, he's like the better con man. So you kind of want to root for Steve Martin because like, oh yeah, he's gonna show up the guy, but you're like he's right. Kind of a dick.
But then you get that turn when, and the big plot twist in the movie is the person that they have this bet with. So once they divide, they decide to have this bet to steal $50,000 from a mark, and they pick a woman who they think is rich, and she says that she actually just like won a contest and she doesn't have all that much money, and she's selling all of her possessions to help Steve Martin's character, which I guess we should kind of talk about the bet and what they actually do. But essentially what happens is they agree to take the money. Steve Martin pretends to be this veteran who has psychosomatic he's paralyzed psychosomatically. He can't walk, but there's nothing physically wrong with him. It's all in his head. And Michael Caine, to kind of fuck with Steve Martin's bit, pretends to be this very famous psychologist, so that way he can kind of undercut what Steve Martin's doing. And he just says, my fee's $50,000. So the mark, Janet, is trying to raise the money. Turns out at the end of the movie, she's actually this person that they've been calling the Jackal. So there was this news report that there's American con man or con artist is stealing from people. And so Michael Caine just assumes it's Steve Martin. And it turns out the big twist was it was the woman, and she ends up getting both of them. But some of the other good stuff comes from Steve Martin being quote unquote paralyzed. But I don't know if I actually liked the scenes where like Michael Caine's like hitting him.
Yeah.
Like, did you guys find that funny?
With the whipping? No.
Yeah, with like I think it was
the crying at the end of it.
Yeah, the crying at the end of it was funny, but I feel like it just went on a little too long.
It went. I was waiting for him to be like, "Isn't this a bit extreme?" Like, I don't know, like because it was extreme. You know, it was
extreme, and he doesn't react, and Michael Caine does this thing where he like goes down the hallway and runs and does a running jump whip with this like reed.
Yeah,
and I mean, Steve Martin does a great job of not moving. Obviously, he's not really hitting him, but it's just not believable that Janet would let it go through if she wasn't a con artist. Like, no regular person would be like, even if the person was psychosomatically paralyzed and he wasn't faking it, like, you're still doing damage, and you're promising this guy's gonna walk within a week. He's gonna be fucked up. It makes no sense.
He definitely should have at least been bleeding.
Right. Oh God, I'm just like reading my notes. It's stupid. So going back a little bit when he's playing like the brother who's like mentally challenged, he asks if he can go to the bathroom while they're at dinner, and he pees himself or pretends to pee himself. When they're driving, they're just on the road, and he's like, I think my testicles are dropping. Like, it's kind of dumb. Like, I don't feel like the humor in this movie is all that smart.
No, it's not smart, but I would still say it's more refined than the new one.
Right. So they eventually find out that she's poor, or they think she's poor, and throughout the whole movie, where it's the only reason that Michael Caine's character doesn't just just really win the bet, like if this was a real person and not like another con artist, is because former patients keep coming up to him and calling him a prince, and he's just like, oh, those are former patients, even though they're obviously just former marks who think he's the prince. Because I don't understand how this works. He stays in the same city over and over again. Like, you're gonna see
keep
people
going to
again.
The same fucking casino.
Yeah, it makes no sense. But eventually, I don't even know how to talk about this movie because I went in really wanting to like it. I actually fell asleep in the middle because I've kind of had a cold this weekend, and I went back through and rewatched what I missed. And I don't know if it's just because I was sick, but I'm finding it very hard to talk about this movie.
No, I mean, I just don't think there was much substance. I mean, there's a lot of the same stuff over and over
Right.
again, right? And it's 2 hours of movie.
To be honest, like I stopped watching it for a bit because I was like, this is kind of rough. They're like just playing this like horrible con on this woman that's like kind of sweet and nice, and then
then eventually the con changes when so Michael Caine wants to call off the bet and be like, I don't steal from people who can't afford it. And Steve Martin is just like, who cares? If she's going to give us the money, what do we care? Like, he's once again being an asshole.
Yeah.
Right.
And so Michael Caine, he goes, fine, if you want to call off the bet, then you leave. And Michael Caine's like, no, I was here first. So then they agree whoever can sleep with her wins.
Yeah.
Which is pretty fucked up.
Yeah.
And eventually they have this whole thing where Michael Caine's pretending, like, is forcing him Steve Martin to watch them dance, and then Steve Martin convinces all these sailors to basically beat up Michael Caine, but then Michael Caine just pays them to party, and it goes back and forth every time they turn around, but there's no real explanation to it. Like, you don't see Michael Caine do anything that makes the sailors not want to beat him up. It's just like the next scene.
But
he's just like, oh yeah, I convinced them.
He's because he says he was once a Royal Naval officer, and he shows them.
Right. Oh, okay. But it's just like, it's so convenient. Like, they just lie, and every time they do something, they just flip it around on the other person. But eventually, they find out that she's conning them. So, she ends up telling Steve. She ends up stealing money from Steve Martin, but then tells Michael Caine that Steve Martin took all of her money, and so he pays her. So she ends up getting, $50,000. She says only $50,000, but did she actually steal anything from Steve Martin?
She just stole his
clothes and wallet.
That's right. She stole all his clothes and all his possessions, and then steals $50,000 from Michael Caine. They are about to go their separate ways. Steve Martin kind of has this little bit where he's saying goodbye and he's just going to go try his luck elsewhere. And he tells Michael Caine's butler, I'm sorry for breaking your VCR. I'll send you a check. And the butler's just like, shut up, asshole.
Yeah.
Which I thought was kind of funny. And then Janet comes back with all these people who want to invest in real estate in Australia. And she says something along the lines I made $3 million last year, but your $50,000 was the most fun. And then just decides to work with them. And then Steve Martin gets kind of messed with again, where she introduces Michael Caine's character as this wealthy real estate agent in Australia and his mute partner kind of thing. So Steve Martin just kind of gets the shit role again, and that's kind of the movie. That's the twist.
To be honest, I actually wouldn't mind watching that though.
That con.
Yeah.
Right.
The three of them working together, because I think that would have
And
been
you
fun.
get
That could be
more
fun.
Steve Martin physical comedy.
Yeah. And so originally this movie was supposed to be Mick Jagger and
Wow.
David Bowie.
because they had just done that music video of Dancing in the Street and they were really popular, and then it just didn't work out. So then this became the movie, and they ad-libbed it and whatnot. I was just expecting a lot more. This is a classic movie, and I don't know. I was a little disappointed in this movie.
I'm sorry, Mike.
Yeah. You guys have anything else you guys want to talk about?
No, I think you touched on most of the points.
All right, let's move to the other one.
Next movie, 2019, The Hustle. I've got a summary if you want it.
Yep, go ahead.
I don't want it.
Summarize that
All right.
bitch.
This one is from Anonymous. Anne Hathaway and Rebel Wilson star as female scam artists, one low rent and the other high class, who team up to take down the men who have wronged them.
Okay.
All right. Yep. Okay.
Not really.
Nope. Not at
No,
all.
that's not what it is
I-
at all.
I think I would have preferred that movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, like if it was a revenge, like because like there's a point where Anne Hathaway basically just says like all men are evil, but she hasn't necessarily been wronged by anybody as far as we can tell.
No,
That
they
makes a
just
little bit more
team
sense
up
for Rebel
get a
Wilson's
mark.
character.
dumb.
Did you guys see a trailer for this movie before
Nah,
you guys watched it?
Nah.
I have seen a trailer for it, but I do not remember it at all.
All the funniest bits were in the trailer. I think the funniest thing in the whole movie is towards the beginning of the movie, and they do it again towards the end of the movie.
The garbage
But
bags?
the garbage bag stuff.
Yeah.
So Rebel Wilson goes to this bar. You see this douchebag like steal money from like the table for the tip. He uses it to pay for a beer, and then he's on like a Tinder date of some kind. Rebel Wilson shows up and he's pissed. He's like, "You're not the person I'm supposed to meet." And she goes, "No, I'm just the friend." And you can see she's heartbroken. Like towards the end of the movie, she has this like reveal, and it turns out like Rebel Wilson's character is a little bit more sympathetic than the Steve. She's the Steve Martin analog.
Yeah, but they switched some of the story.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit. So she's gonna, scam this guy, and she's basically saying, "Oh yeah, my friend is great, but she's wearing a push-up bra and contouring, but she's super hot. She just needs a boob job, and she needs like $500 to finish it." And the guy's like, "Oh, I'll pay the $500." And then like a previous mark shows up with the cops, and so she runs outside, and she's wearing this black latex dress, and there's just a pile of garbage bags, and she just lays down in the garbage because she's fat.
Yeah. She just looks like a full garbage bag.
Yeah, I thought that was funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got a chuckle
Yeah.
out of it. I
Chuckle.
think there was like 2 points in this movie where I laughed, and they were both dumb, dry humor jokes, and I don't remember what they were.
Yeah, then you go. It basically follows the same thing. She goes to Europe. She does the exact same scam with I'll just have water, and she gets somebody else to pay for it, and then she meets Anne Hathaway's character and it does the same thing. I'm a con man, or I'm a con artist.
That sequence, really quick, I thought was done way better with Steve Martin, because like he does it where he like looks at it, and he's just like eating bread. He's like, "I'll just have water," and then he like that lady's like, "Oh yeah, I'll buy you whatever," and he's like quickly like turns to the waiter, orders what he wants. With Rebel Wilson, it was like a pause, and she's like, it just wasn't as comedic. Like it didn't had that.
It
Yeah,
was
it
just
had
too
more of an
quick. The
asshole
timing
vibe.
wasn't good.
Yeah,
Like it, because when he did it, there was no pause. But I think he also sold the story a little bit better.
yeah.
Like the whole like, I can have water, right? That's free. And like he seemed more pathetic and real, where this was just
Yeah.
like,
She's just eating a sugar packet. I'm like, all right.
yeah. So she ends up seeing Anne Hathaway's character. Anne Hathaway's character, she's doing a really bad British accent. I was
Oh,
like,
God.
she's done better British accents. Well, it turns out her whole thing was people know she's American. She's an A-list actress now.
Right.
So she's like, what she chose to do is do a fake British accent, so people would just, she's even conning that, like everything. So maybe she's not actually British or whatever. What's weird is she's supposed to be set up as this like bombshell, beautiful woman, which Anne Hathaway is beautiful. She really is. I love Anne Hathaway, but whoever did her makeup in this movie did not do a good job, because I thought she looked kind of funny in this movie when I compared to like Ocean's 8 last year, where she looked phenomenal. Like there was just something about her that looked off. Like it's weird, and the music was weird. Like it just seems like nobody cared about the production of this movie.
It feels more like just the crew and the actors having fun, to be honest.
Yeah, it
Maybe.
seemed like just winging it.
Yeah, maybe. So they do the same thing. She hires a few males to come on and distract her, and then she comes. It's 90% the same movie. This movie has a little bit more. It's a little bit more sexual. It's a little bit raunchier, but not by much.
But that's only because of Rebel Wilson. I don't feel like Anne Hathaway had that vibe as much.
She did a couple things. Like she says something along the like she's at one point calls her big titted Russell Crowe or something like that.
It's like at the end of the movie.
She has an oyster
They-
slip down her blouse.
Yeah. And fall out the
Yeah,
other side.
Rebel Wilson did have that one scene where she bangs that guy in the airplane. She calls him Nazi Gollum.
Oh, God.
And he says something along like, she's like, we could have sex now. He's like, I have standards. She goes, as do I. I have STDs, as do I. And then they just raw dog in the airplane. That was kind of gross.
Yep.
Yeah.
Definitely. Definitely.
I have
gross.
almost no notes for this movie.
I don't know. I just felt like the humor in this movie was not there. Like, it was just dumb humor.
Yeah, well, and like in this, she pretends to be blind versus being paralyzed, and it's just that's such a harder thing to do.
Oh,
Yeah.
that made me laugh. He was like, you have hysterical blindness? She's like, I don't find that funny. Because that's actually...
Well, yeah, I don't find it funny. Like, there's little things like that, but I don't think they made up for the stupidness. Like, when they go, instead of having the thing where he gets hit with the reeds, she does things like she puts like French fries in the toilet and then makes
yeah,
her
that was
eat it.
gross.
And is blowing in her face and like waves a cane at her, kind of thing. You can't override reflex. Like, it's a stupid thing to do. It's not a very good con, and it's not a very believable thing. And, ultimately the whole movie plays out exactly the same. Their male Mark is now an app developer, but he doesn't actually own his app, so he doesn't have money. But he says nice things to her, and so she has this like heart-to-heart moment. I think this is the best part of the whole movie. She has this heart-to-heart with Anne Hathaway, basically saying he's a good guy. He doesn't have the money. We shouldn't be doing this. And she has this thing like, I catfished people is primarily what I did, and I never actually decided to take their money until I showed up in person, and they were mean and they looked disgusted, and then I decided to take them for all they're worth, kind of thing. So it's, that I kind of liked and appreciated, but she's still a bad person.
Yeah, totally.
Well,
Still a con
she's
artist.
like the Michael Caine, but just swapped. Because Michael Caine said a similar thing with his women. He said like he made sure they were corrupted and bad.
Right. So that's like the only thing they swapped between the two characters. Other than that, like their roles are exactly the same.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, God, it's just I fell asleep during this one as well. And I was at the gym this afternoon after work, and I was rewatching the middle portion of the movie while I was at the gym.
I'm so sorry.
I'm sorry.
It's so bad. It's so bad.
Like the sequence with her pretending to be special, it's just like it's cranked up to 11, but it's not funnier.
It wasn't funny at all. And then like there's this like the other thing that we didn't talk about in the other one is there's a point where Michael Caine and Anne Hathaway get the Steve Martin Rebel Wilson character arrested, and in this version, instead of saying in the original version, Michael Caine tells Steve Martin it's a bunch of old divorce. It's like a retirement town, not old divorcees. In this one, Rebel Wilson says she's out there to get like rich men, and Anne Hathaway's like, oh no, it's a lesbian community now. So when she's arrested, she's like gyrating on the bars and trying to convince the police instructor to be a lesbian with her to get out, kind of thing. It's like it didn't work for me.
Nope. It was gross.
And like I don't want to be one of those people who say like female reboots don't work, because I actually really liked Ocean's 8 and I really liked
I like
the Ghostbusters.
Ghostbusters. Yeah,
I
that was a
really
lot of
enjoyed
fun.
that movie, and I like Anne Hathaway, so I went into this movie wanting to like it. I don't like Rebel Wilson. I don't think I've liked her in anything.
I like her
I
in
think
she's
Pitch
fine in-
Perfect.
Yeah, Pitch Perfect was the only.
I think
role
she's fine in
liked her
small doses, but I don't think she ever plays a different character.
No, she's the
Like
same
she
dumb
always plays
character.
Fat Amy, basically.
Yeah.
And I was hoping for a little bit more. I was a little disappointed by Anne. Like I don't understand why Anne Hathaway did this movie.
She was bored.
Maybe,
And she came off Ocean's 8,
maybe,
another female remake.
right? But that was good.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe she thought
Yeah.
this would be good. There was a point where where Thomas the con
The
guy,
Mark.
or whatever, the Mark, yeah, asked her what the psychiatrist's name was, and she just made up a name on the spot. And he looked it up on his phone right there, and he came up with the website, which led to Anne Hathaway. That didn't make any.
No, it didn't.
Well,
Well, like-
it came up with something which made him go downstairs, right?
Yeah, so what happened was Anne Hathaway heard the name. So she quickly
No, but she
got...
made up with that name on the spot, and he
Yeah.
looked it up.
Right. And so they made up the name, and then the reason he was able to find it was they made up the name. Anne Hathaway, I guess, heard it. Wait, who made up the name? Anne Hathaway or...
No, Rebel Wilson made
Yeah,
it up.
Rebel Wilson. Okay, that's right.
At the same
so
time,
Rebel
he
Wilson
looked
made
it
up the name. Anne Hathaway heard it. Somehow got someone to make like a few
Yeah.
Google hits, and then she made an Instagram account.
No,
And-
Yeah.
because Rebel Wilson made up the name as she was
No,
talking to
the
him.
police. Her.
No.
her
What
police
happened
friend-
was...
That was in the original.
No, same thing.
No,
same thing.
no, Double D. No.
What?
No. So Rebel Wilson and Thomas go up to the hotel room for a little bit. And during that time, Anne Hathaway's team makes up like a website. And so he goes to Google the doctor, and an Instagram account comes up and has a picture of the lobby of the hotel they're in. So he realizes this world famous doctor is there.
Remember, because like the police friend goes up to Anne Hathaway, he's like, "Oh, she's blah blah blah," and Anne Hathaway's like, "All right, well, we'll stoop to her level," and that's
And make exactly. And they just make like a quick website and then an Instagram account. And he sees the doctor's Instagram account, and it's the hotel lobby.
honestly, you have the better benefit because you actually don't remember this movie, and we're burdened with remembering this movie.
Working real hard to remember this. Yeah, maybe it's just repressed memories. I don't know.
But yeah, that's basically it's basically the exact same movie but worse.
Yeah.
Like I don't have much to say about this movie. Like I think it's pretty obvious that I don't think this was a necessary remake.
It's such a shame because I feel like the quote unquote original had like potential to be a really great movie, and I was hoping that this would fix upon that, but it really doesn't.
It just didn't. Like I was actually really looking forward to watching Dirty Rotten Scoundrels. It's not a bad movie. Like don't get me wrong, it's not a bad movie. I just don't think it lived up to the hype of being one of the greatest comedies of all time. Especially like I just watched a much better Steve Martin movie. I just watched The Jerk, a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, and it is a much better comedy. And you look at like some of the other movies he's done, Father of the Bride, The Three Amigos.
Cheaper by the
Those
dozen.
are way better Steve Martin movies. The Man Who Had Two Brains or something like that. He has another movie that's kind of like where he inserts himself into old like noir films. Like Steve Martin's great. I think he's underrated. I wish he worked more than he does now. But yeah, this just wasn't a good Steve Martin film, and the remake was even worse.
It's unfortunate.
Like I wrote almost no notes, and normally I write a ton of notes. And I thought Anne Hathaway's an amazing actress, Academy Award winning actress, incredible, and I think she just kind of phoned it in on this too.
Yeah. It's rough. It's a rough watch.
Rough
watch,
watch, call it.
indeed. So, I don't think we're not going to pad out this episode. This will be a short episode. This is going to be about a half-hour episode. We've done this a couple of times. We did this with The Longest Yard because it was just too painful to talk about.
Oh, God.
I don't even remember where I was going. So we were supposed to record yesterday. Normally we record on Sundays. Double D, just fucking like an idiot, forgot that we were
Spaced.
supposed to watch these movies. So we pushed it a day. And I kind of wanted to be a dick and be like, I don't envy you having to watch both these movies in one day, you fuck. But I really don't envy Double D having to watch both of these in one day.
Well, to be
Ugh.
fair, I watched one last night and one this morning. So.
Oh, did you? Oh, that's not so bad.
yeah.
God, I didn't watch the Anne Hathaway one until like 10 p.m. on Saturday night, and I was dozing the entire movie, and I kept having to wake up and rewind it, and it's just I didn't care enough. I ended up just going to sleep, and then like I said, watching it in the gym today.
Well, I'm sorry you watched it.
Yep. Well, I don't have much more to say. Do you guys have anything else you want to say?
No.
Definitely not.
No. Cool. Fuck this movie. This didn't need to happen.
Definitely not.
I'm done. I'm done. Thanks for listening, guys.
Sorry, guys.
Thanks. Don't go and watch these movies. That's
I'm
not
sorry
worth
if
it.
you already did.
But thank you guys for listening. Check out everything that's Remake Rewind related and MDXpods related at MDXpods.com or on Twitter or Instagram at MDXpods. and check out our other podcasts. But that's it.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Mike's dying.
Nice.
No.
I am.